Hello, my dear friends. Welcome to English in Fluency. My name is Alex, and I am truly so glad that you have decided to spend some of your valuable time with me today. Before we dive into our main topic, I want to ask you to do something for me. Just for a moment, I want you to travel back in your memory. Try to find a specific moment, a clear picture in your mind, of a time you felt completely and utterly stuck in your English learning journey. Perhaps you can see it now. You're sitting at your desk late at night, the only light coming from your lamp, casting a yellow glow on the open page of an English textbook. The page is filled with dense paragraphs and complex grammar charts. You read the same sentence for the fifth time, but the words remain just shapes, a secret code designed to confuse you, and a thick fog of frustration begins to cloud your mind. Or maybe your memory is of a social situation. You're with a group of people, and a native English speaker tells a joke. Everyone around you bursts into laughter, their faces bright with amusement. You smile and nod, pretending you understood, but inside, you feel a cold, isolating silence. The sounds washed over you, a rapid current of words you couldn't grasp, and you felt invisible. Can you feel that familiar, heavy knot of frustration tightening in your stomach? That quiet, sinking feeling in your chest? You think to yourself, a thought that has likely crossed your mind 100 times before, I study so hard. I watch videos, I use the apps, I buy the books. I put in the hours. Why am I not getting better? What am I missing? It is a lonely, discouraging, and deeply personal feeling of failure, and I need you to hear this. I promise you, almost every single person who has ever dared to learn a new language has stood in that exact same spot and felt that exact same way. What if I told you that the key to unlocking the fluency you dream of is not a secret trick hidden in an expensive course? What if I told you it isn't a revolutionary piece of software powered by artificial intelligence, and it has absolutely nothing to do with having a special, innate talent for languages? What if I told you that the most powerful, most effective, most transformative tool you could possibly possess is something you already have? It is something you can begin to use this very day, right after you finish listening to me. It costs absolutely nothing, and it has the quiet, undeniable power to change everything about your English and your life. Today, we are going to talk about that tool. We are going to explore the simple, the unglamorous, and the absolutely earth-shattering power of consistency. And to help us truly understand its impact, to see it in action, I want to tell you a story. It is a story about two friends, two colleagues, a young man named Liam and a young woman named Maya. Liam and Maya embarked on their English learning journey at the exact same time, from the exact same starting line. They worked at a bustling, modern marketing firm, sharing a cubicle wall in the same open-plan office, and they both nurtured a huge, life-changing dream: to become fluent enough in English to join the company's international projects team, a role that meant travel, greater responsibility, and a much higher salary. Their starting points were so similar, it was uncanny. They had the same rusty, half-forgotten knowledge from their school days, the same nervous tremor in their voices when they tried to speak, and the same bright-eyed, ambitious enthusiasm for the challenge ahead. But their approach, the fundamental philosophy that guided the path they each chose to walk, could not have been more different. Liam was a man of immense passion, of grand gestures, of big, explosive bursts of energy. On the very first day of their shared mission, he declared an all-out war on the English language. He spent an entire evening researching, and the next day, he arrived at work, his eyes shining with manic energy. He had purchased the most expensive, highly rated language learning app, the one with a slick interface, gamified lessons, and a price tag that made Maya's eyes widen. He proudly showed her how he had subscribed to 20 different YouTube channels, each one hosted by a hyper-enthusiastic polyglot, promising to teach him the real, native-level English of the streets in just a matter of weeks. That evening, he went home and constructed a grand, color-coded schedule that he taped to his wall. It looked more like a military operation than a study plan. On Monday, he would dedicate 3 solid hours to mastering advanced grammatical concepts, like the past perfect continuous. On Tuesday, he would immerse himself by watching a complex political thriller movie, a film famous for its fast, overlapping dialogue, and he would do it with no subtitles. On Wednesday, he would attempt to read a classic novel, something by a famous, long-dead author known for their dense, archaic prose. His energy was a spectacle to behold. It was like a magnificent firework exploding in the pitch-black night sky, dazzling, brilliant, and radiating an almost overwhelming power. The next morning, he cornered Maya at the office coffee machine, his voice buzzing with an uncontrollable excitement. "Maya! You won't believe the app I got last night. It's incredible. It uses advanced artificial intelligence to listen to my pronunciation and correct it in real time. And I found this amazing YouTube channel that teaches you all the latest slang from the streets of New York. I'm making a list. It's going to be amazing. What are you doing? What's your big plan? You have to go big or go home, right?" Maya smiled her usual soft, thoughtful smile and held up a thin, simple-looking paperback book. The cover was bright and cheerful, with a simple illustration, and the text inside was large and friendly. "I found this," she said, her voice calm and steady. "It's called a graded reader. This one is for beginners, level A2. The story is called The Missing Necklace. I'm going to try and read 1 chapter every day. And it comes with an audio file, so I can listen to it too." Liam stared at the book, a flicker of disbelief, almost of pity in his eyes. It looked like something a child would read. A graded reader? Seriously, Maya. That's so slow. That's baby English. We're adults. We need to be challenged. We need to push ourselves to the absolute limit. You should be watching the BBC News, reading articles from The Guardian. Maya just shrugged, her smile unwavering. Maybe I will, eventually. But for now, I just want to build a small, manageable habit. I know I can find 20 minutes a day for this. It feels possible. Liam shook his head, a little disappointed in his friend's lack of ambition. Okay, Maya. It's your choice, I guess. But don't come crying to me when I'm fluent in 6 months and you're still reading about lost jewelry. You'll see. And with that, he turned and walked away, his mind already racing, trying to recall the difference between a gerund and a participle, ready for his next battle. For the first 2 weeks, Liam was an unstoppable force of nature. He was a machine. He barricaded himself in his room for hours, every single night. He filled entire notebooks with convoluted grammar rules he didn't fully understand, copying them word for word from a dense university textbook. He forced himself to listen to podcasts about economics and philosophy, where the speakers talked so fast that he felt like he was standing in a storm of sounds, only managing to catch a word here and there. Market. Therefore, society. He felt utterly exhausted, mentally drained, his brain aching with the effort. But he also felt intensely productive. He was working hard, he was hustling, and in his mind, that was the only thing that mattered. But then, at the start of the third week, reality intervened. He had a horribly difficult day at work. A major project he was leading ran into a series of unexpected problems, and he had to stay 2 hours late to deal with the fallout. He arrived home feeling completely drained, his mind a barren landscape of stress and fatigue. He slumped onto his sofa and stared at the 3-hour study block on his magnificent schedule. Advanced phrasal verbs and idiomatic expressions. A wave of profound tiredness, so heavy it felt physical, washed over him. "I'll skip tonight," he whispered to the empty room. "I've studied so hard these past 2 weeks, my brain deserves a break. One night off won't hurt me." But that one night off felt so good, so liberating, that it silently turned into 2. Then the weekend arrived, a glorious oasis of freedom, and he decided he deserved to relax and not think about English at all. The next week, weighed down by a subtle but persistent feeling of guilt, he only managed to summon the energy to study on one day. The brilliant, dazzling firework had fizzled out, leaving behind only a trail of smoke and a faint smell of regret. The expensive app on his phone lay unopened, its notifications silently pleading for attention. The once pristine notebooks gathered a thin, accusing layer of dust on his desk. He started to feel a growing sense of shame, which, paradoxically, made it even harder to face his study materials and start again. Meanwhile, Maya continued with her simple, quiet, unassuming routine. Her habit was becoming ingrained, woven into the very fabric of her day. Every morning, without fail, she would wake up, make a cup of green tea, and sit in her favorite armchair by the window that looked out onto a small garden. For just 20 minutes, she would lose herself in her graded reader. The story of The Missing Necklace had finished, and now she was reading about a young detective solving a simple art theft in Paris. The language was deliberately easy. She understood almost every single word. This feeling, she was discovering, was profoundly important. She wasn't fighting the language. She wasn't wrestling with it. She was simply enjoying it. Reading was not a chore on a to-do list. It was a pleasant, calm, and interesting start to her day. Because she could effortlessly understand the story, she felt a genuine connection to the characters. She worried about the young detective, she disliked the arrogant art dealer, and she genuinely wanted to know what would happen next. This positive emotional feedback, this daily dose of success and enjoyment, was the fuel that made her want to come back the next day. It was a cycle of pleasure, not a cycle of pain. On her 30-minute bus ride to work, she would put in her earphones and listen to the audio version of the chapter she had just read. She would close her eyes and hear the words she had so recently seen on the page, now spoken by a clear, steady, and pleasant voice. This simple act was forging powerful connections in her brain. It was linking the visual representation of a word to its auditory counterpart. She wasn't trying to decipher a fast, confusing, slang-filled movie. She was listening to a story she already knew and understood, which allowed her mind to relax and focus purely on the pronunciation, the rhythm, the musicality, and the natural flow of the sentences. It was a small, simple act. 20 minutes of reading, 30 minutes of listening. Every single day. No exceptions. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't glamorous. It was not a firework. It was more like a tiny, fragile seed being given a small, consistent amount of water. Every single day. A month passed, then 2, then 3. Liam was now firmly trapped in a painful, self-defeating cycle of guilt and avoidance. He would go for an entire week, sometimes 10 days, without studying at all. Then, overwhelmed by a crushing sense of having failed, he would try to compensate by forcing himself into a massive 5-hour cram session on a Saturday afternoon. He would emerge from these sessions with a pounding headache and a feeling of being completely overwhelmed, his mind a chaotic jumble of disconnected facts. These punishing sessions only reinforced his negative association with English, making it even more likely he wouldn't study for another week. His English level had not changed at all. In fact, he felt more confused and less confident than when he had started, because he had bits and pieces of 100 different advanced topics floating aimlessly in his head with no solid foundation to anchor them. He began to actively avoid Maya at the coffee machine. He felt a deep sense of embarrassment. He couldn't face her quiet consistency when his own grand ambitions lay in ruins around him. The 6-month deadline he had so proudly declared was approaching, and he was no closer to his goal. One gray Tuesday afternoon, their department was called into an emergency video conference. A potential new client from Toronto, Canada, was considering their firm for a major contract. The connection was a little bit glitchy, the video freezing every now and then, and the client, a woman named Sarah, spoke with a gentle but clear and distinctly North American accent. The managers were nervous. This contract could make or break their year. After the client finished her initial presentation, Liam's manager turned to the team, his face serious. "Okay, team. That was a lot to take in. Does anyone have any initial thoughts on the client's proposal? Any immediate questions or concerns?" The room fell into a heavy, uncomfortable silence. Liam froze in his chair. His heart began to pound against his ribs like a trapped bird. He had understood some of the individual words Sarah had said: timeline, budget, deliverables, but they were all jumbled in his mind like alphabet soup. He couldn't form a coherent thought. He was utterly terrified of opening his mouth and saying something stupid, of making an embarrassing grammar mistake, of his pronunciation being clunky and wrong. He imagined the client and his own managers staring at him, judging him. The fear was paralyzing. He stayed completely silent, staring down at his empty notepad, his pen held tightly in his hand. Then, a quiet voice sliced through the silence. It was Maya. "I have a thought, if that's okay," she said. Her voice was a little shaky. You could hear the nerves, but it was clear and steady. "If I understood correctly, the client is most concerned about the timeline for Phase 2, particularly the integration with their existing systems. I think we can offer a more flexible, phased solution for that. For example, we could propose starting with a smaller pilot program to demonstrate value quickly." And she continued to speak, calmly and logically, for a full minute. It wasn't perfect. She made 1 or 2 small grammar mistakes, saying informations instead of information at one point. Her vocabulary wasn't filled with the flashy idioms Liam had tried to memorize. but it didn't matter. Her message was perfectly, absolutely clear. She was communicating. She was contributing. She was understood. When she finished, her manager, who had been listening intently, smiled broadly and nodded. "That's an excellent point, Maya. A very smart suggestion. Thank you." Liam stared at her, his mouth hanging slightly open. He felt a dizzying mix of shock, admiration, and a profound sense of personal failure. It was like he was seeing a completely different person. Just a few short months ago, they were standing on the exact same spot on the starting line. How on earth did this happen? How did her baby English book about a missing necklace lead to this moment of poised professional confidence? While his expensive apps, his military-style schedule, and his intense study sessions led to him sitting in a puddle of his own frozen, terrified silence. The difference was so stark, so undeniable. It felt like a physical shock. The meeting ended a few minutes later, and as people began packing up their laptops and shuffling out of the room, Liam walked slowly over to Maya's desk. The arrogant, buzzing excitement was gone from his voice. It had been replaced by a quiet, humbled confusion. "Maya," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "how did you do that? You were so clear. You were so confident. I didn't understand half of what that client was saying." Maya looked up from her computer, and she could see the raw frustration and deep disappointment etched on her friend's face. She gave him a kind, empathetic smile. "It's the book, Liam," she said simply, "and the one after it, and the one after that. It's the 20 minutes, every single day. I promise you, that's all it is." Liam shook his head in disbelief. "No, it can't be that simple. It just can't be. I studied for hours and hours. I have notebooks full of advanced phrasal verbs and complex idioms. I guarantee you I technically know more English words than you do." "Ah," Maya replied gently, her expression full of understanding. "But knowing a list of words and being able to use them in a real conversation are two very, very different things." She leaned forward, her voice becoming more animated, eager to share the profound lesson she had learned. "Think of it like this, Liam. Your method was like trying to build a brick wall by renting a huge truck, filling it with 1,000 bricks, driving it to a field on a Sunday, and then just dumping them all out in a giant pile. It's a massive, exhausting effort. It feels very dramatic and productive. But at the end of the day, all you have is a messy, useless pile of bricks. My method was about placing one single brick perfectly into position with just the right amount of mortar every single day. One brick seems like nothing. It's slow. It's boring. It feels like you're making no progress at all. But after 100 days, I have a long, strong, solid wall. And you just have a dusty pile of unused bricks and a lot of frustration." This beautiful analogy gets to the very heart, the very soul, of consistency. What Liam experienced was a classic case of burnout. His brain was completely and utterly overwhelmed. When you try to cram too much new, complex information into your mind too quickly, it simply can't process it all. It can't form the necessary long-term connections. It's exactly like trying to pour a gallon of water into a tiny cup. Most of it just spills over the sides, wasted. Learning a language is not a race. It is not a 100-meter sprint. It is a marathon, run over a vast and changing landscape. The people who successfully finish marathons are not the ones who sprint frantically for the first mile, only to collapse in exhaustion. They are the ones who find a steady, comfortable, sustainable pace they can maintain, hour after hour, for the entire 26 miles. Maya's 20 minutes a day was her steady, sustainable pace. It was a commitment so small that it became almost impossible to fail. Even on her busiest, most stressful, most tiring day, she could always find 20 minutes. This created a powerful, positive feedback loop in her brain, a chain of success. Every single day she completed her tiny task. Her brain got a little reward, a small hit of dopamine, that feeling of accomplishment. This positive reinforcement wired her brain to want to do it again the next day. She wasn't just learning English. She was building an unbreakable habit. Let's go a little deeper and talk about what is physically happening inside your brain. Think of your brain as a dense, vast forest. When you learn something brand new, you create a new pathway, a new connection between your brain cells, your neurons. The very first time you create this path, it's like trying to walk through a section of the forest with tall grass and thick undergrowth. It's difficult, it requires a lot of effort, and when you look back, the path you've made is barely visible. If you don't walk that same path again for a week, the grass grows back, the branches spring back into place, and the path essentially disappears. This was the tragedy of Liam's method. He would spend one massive study session hacking hundreds of weak little paths all over the forest. But because he would then abandon them for days at a time, the forest reclaimed them. The neural connections were lost. But when you do something consistently, every single day, you walk that same exact path over and over and over. The first few times, you're just tamping down the grass. Soon, it becomes a clear dirt trail. With more repetition, you wear away the rocks and roots, and it becomes a smooth, paved road. With continued, dedicated daily practice, that road becomes a multi-lane superhighway. The information, the word, the grammar structure can travel down that highway instantly, with zero effort, zero conscious thought. This is what neuroscientists call automaticity. This is what fluency feels like. It's when you no longer have to stop and think, okay, which tense should I use here? Or, what's that word for? The language just flows, because the neural pathways in your brain are so strong, so wide, and so well established. Maya was patiently paving a few small, essential roads, making them perfect. Liam was randomly hacking at 1,000 different spots in the jungle, and, ultimately, getting nowhere. Let's also analyze why Maya's specific choice, the graded reader, was such a stroke of genius. Graded readers are books that are specially and carefully written for language learners. The vocabulary and grammar are meticulously controlled for each specific level. An A2 level book, like the one Maya started with, will only use the most common, high-frequency words and the simplest sentence structures. Why is this so incredibly powerful? Because it allows you to experience the language without the constant, draining struggle and frustration. It allows for what linguists call comprehensible input. You understand the vast majority of what you are reading. This means you can get into a state of flow. You get lost in the story. You are not studying English anymore. You are using English for its intended purpose, to receive a message, to feel an emotion, to be entertained. This is a joyful, engaging experience, not a painful one. Your brain, in this relaxed and receptive state, starts to absorb the patterns of the language naturally and subconsciously, just as a child does when they learn their first language. You see the same core words, and the same fundamental grammar structures used again and again in dozens of different, meaningful contexts. This reinforces them in your mind in a way that is far deeper and more permanent than memorizing a rule from a textbook. Liam, on the other hand, was attempting to do what is called intensive reading with a novel that was far beyond his level. Intensive reading is when you take a very short text and analyze it slowly, with a dictionary, looking up every unfamiliar word and dissecting every single grammar rule. This is a very useful and powerful exercise, but it is also incredibly tiring and should only be done for short periods. By trying to read an entire classic novel this way, Liam was turning the beautiful act of reading into a terrible, exhausting punishment. He was building a strong mental association between English reading and feelings of failure, frustration, and inadequacy. Maya was building an association between English reading and feelings of pleasure, success, and curiosity. Which of these two people do you think is more likely to continue their habit for a year, or 2 years, or a lifetime? And the listening component is just as crucial. By listening to the audio of a book she had already read and understood, Maya was training her ear in the most efficient and effective way imaginable. She wasn't just being bombarded by random, meaningless sounds. She was actively connecting the sounds she heard to the words she already knew, to the characters she already cared about, to the story she already understood. This is a form of deep, active listening practice. It trained her brain to recognize the sounds, the rhythm, the intonation, and the connected speech of natural English in a context that was completely safe and non-stressful. It built her listening confidence brick by brick, day by day, so that when she was in that high-stakes meeting and the client from Canada began to speak, her brain didn't panic and shut down. Her brain thought, "Wait a minute. I know these sounds. I've heard these patterns before. This is just like my audiobooks, only a little faster. I can understand this." Her consistent, daily practice had been the perfect training ground for that real-world moment. Let's talk for a moment about the simple, undeniable mathematics of this. The power of consistency is the power of compound interest. It's a concept from finance, but it applies perfectly to skill acquisition. It's the idea that small, regular gains add up to incredible, almost unbelievable results over time. Let's imagine for a moment that you could improve your English by just 1 tiny percent every single day. 1% is almost nothing. It's invisible. You would not notice it from one day to the next. After one day, you are 1.01 times better than you were. After 2 days, it's 1.01 multiplied by 1.01. It's still a tiny, insignificant number. But if you continue this small, consistent effort for a full year, what is the result? The result is 1.01 raised to the power of 365. The answer is not that you are 365% better. The astounding answer is that you are nearly 38 times better. Your skill has not grown in a straight line. It has grown exponentially. Conversely, imagine if your skills decrease by just 1% every day because you are not practicing, because of forgetting. At the end of the year, you are left with almost nothing. This is the tragic mathematics of Liam's journey. His big study sessions would give him a small boost, but then the long periods of inactivity, of forgetting, would cause his skills to decay, bringing him right back to where he started, or even further behind. Maya was patiently earning her 1% every single day, without fail, and it was compounding into a fortune of fluency. So, how can you be like Maya? How can you take this story and apply its profound lesson to your own life? How can you harness this incredible world-changing power of consistency in your own English learning journey? It all starts with a fundamental change in your mindset. You must, from this day forward, stop searching for the magic trick, the secret shortcut, the revolutionary new method. It does not exist. You must stop measuring your progress day by day, or even week by week. Language learning is a slow, organic process, and daily progress is almost always invisible to the naked eye. You must start thinking like a patient gardener, not like an impatient builder of skyscrapers. You plant a small seed, you water it a little bit every single day, and then you step back and you trust the process. For weeks, sometimes for months, it may look like absolutely nothing is happening on the surface. But you must have faith that underground, in the unseen darkness, the roots are growing deep and strong. And then, one day, when the time is right, a small, vibrant green shoot will appear. And it will continue to grow, taller and stronger every day, as long as you continue to show up and give it that small amount of water. Let's build a practical, actionable plan, right now, you and me, together. A plan directly inspired by Maya's simple, elegant success. First, you must find your one brick. You must define your 20 minutes. This should be an activity that is so small, so easy, and so manageable that it feels almost ridiculous. It should be an activity that you cannot say no to, even on your worst day. It is infinitely better to promise yourself you will read for just 5 minutes every day and actually do it 365 times a year, than to promise yourself you will study for 2 hours a day and only do it 10 times a year. The initial goal here is not mastery of the language. The initial goal is the mastery of the habit of showing up. So, what could your one brick be? It could be reading 2 pages of a graded reader. It could be listening to one 5-minute podcast designed for beginners. It could be writing just 3 simple sentences in an English journal about your day. It could be learning 1 new word and then writing 1 sentence with it. Choose one thing. Just one. Make it laughably simple. Second, you need to anchor this new habit to an existing, established one. This powerful technique is called habit stacking. Maya linked her new reading habit to her already established morning cup of tea. She always had a cup of tea, so she started to always read while she drank it. The tea became the trigger for the reading. What is something that you already do every single day, without fail, like clockwork? Do you ride the bus to work? Do you always drink a cup of coffee at 10 a.m.? Do you walk your dog every evening? Link your new English habit directly to that existing one. For example, after I pour my morning coffee, I will immediately open my graded reader app and read 1 chapter. Or, during my bus ride to work, the moment I sit down, I will put on my headphones and listen to my English podcast before I check my email. This makes the process automatic. You remove the need to make a decision. You don't have to rely on the fickle, unreliable feeling of motivation. Motivation is an emotion, and emotions come and go like the weather. Habits are actions that you perform automatically, on autopilot, regardless of how you feel. Third, you must meticulously prepare your environment for success. You need to make your good habit easy and your bad habits hard. Liam had too much friction. He had to find his books, clear his desk, open his laptop, log in to his app. There were many small steps, each one a potential excuse for his tired brain to give up. Maya, on the other hand, kept her graded reader and her headphones right there on the small table next to her tea kettle. It was easy. It was obvious. There was zero friction. So, prepare your environment tonight. If you want to read a graded reader on your phone, move the app to your home screen so it's the first thing you see. If you want to use a physical book, leave it on your pillow so you have to physically move it before you can go to sleep. Make it as easy as possible to do the right thing and as hard as possible to do the wrong thing. Fourth, and this is perhaps the most important rule of all, you must learn to be kind to yourself and to forgive yourself. There will inevitably be a day when you are sick, or a family emergency happens, or you are simply exhausted beyond measure, and you break the chain. You miss a day. This is a critical, dangerous moment. This is the moment where Liam would fall apart. He would miss one day, and his internal voice would say, "See? You've failed. You've ruined your perfect streak. It's all pointless now. You might as well not even try anymore." This is the all-or-nothing mindset, and it is the enemy of long-term progress. You must adopt a new rule. Never miss twice. If you miss one day, it's an accident. It happens to everyone. If you miss 2 days in a row, you are actively starting a new habit of not studying. So, if you miss a day, your absolute #1 priority. The following day must be to get back on track, even if it's just for 1 single minute. Read 1 sentence. Listen to 30 seconds of your podcast. The goal is not to catch up. The goal is to repair the chain of consistency as quickly as possible. Let's return to our story one last time. After that transformative meeting, Liam went home with a new feeling coursing through him. He was not defeated. He was humbled. And in that humility, there was a glimmer of hope. He finally, truly understood. That evening, he went to his desk, gathered up his expensive, complicated textbooks, and put them in a box. He deleted most of the flashy, gamified apps from his phone. The next day at work, he walked over to Maya's desk, took a deep breath, and asked, "That graded reader you have, the one about the detective, where can I get one for my level?" Maya looked up, and a huge, warm, genuine smile spread across her face. She spent the next 10 minutes showing him websites and apps where he could find them. Liam chose a story that looked interesting to him, an adventure about exploring a lost city in a jungle. It was a beginner-level book, an A2, just like the one Maya had started with. That evening, he didn't set a timer for 3 hours. He just told himself he would read the first chapter. It took him about 15 minutes. He understood most of it. And for the first time in months, he finished an English study session feeling good about himself. He felt a small, precious spark of success. The next morning, he read the second chapter. And the day after that, he started listening to the audio on his way to work. He was no longer trying to be a firework. He was content to be a gardener, just like Maya. He was placing 1 brick perfectly every single day. His progress was slow, but it was real and it was solid. Weeks turned into months. He and Maya would often talk about the stories they were reading during their lunch breaks, helping each other with new words, having simple but real conversations in English. They were not just learning a language anymore. They were sharing a journey. They were keeping each other accountable, motivating each other not with pressure or competition, but with the quiet, powerful force of shared, consistent effort. Liam learned the most profound lesson of all. The journey to fluency is not a competition against anyone else. It is a quiet, personal practice. It's about you against your own laziness, you against your own excuses, you against the part of your brain that craves comfort and resists change. Now, I want you to feel a little bit of this for yourself. Let's do a very small, gentle practice together, right now. I am going to read a short passage from a beginner-level story. I want you to just close your eyes, relax your body, and listen. Don't try to translate in your head. Don't worry about understanding every single word. Just try to get a feeling for the story, to see the pictures in your mind. Are you ready? The old man lived in a small blue house by the sea. Every morning, as the sun began to warm the sand, he walked on the beach with his dog, a small, friendly dog named Salty. The man looked for interesting shells and smooth gray stones that the waves had polished. One windy morning, he threw a stick for Salty, but the dog did not run to get it. The man did not see Salty anywhere. He called his name, his voice thin against the sound of the ocean. "Salty, where are you?" The long, wide beach was empty. The man felt a cold fear begin to grow in his stomach. He started to run, shouting his dog's name into the wind. He ran for a long time, his heart beating fast with worry. Then, far down the beach, he saw a small group of children. They were laughing and pointing at something in the water. As he got closer, he saw a small, wet dog, jumping and playing in the gentle waves with the children. It was Salty. The old man stopped running. The fear in his stomach was replaced by a warm, happy feeling of relief. Now, just take a breath. Could you picture the old man and his little blue house? Could you feel his panic when he couldn't find his dog? And could you feel his happiness and relief at the end? You probably could, even if you didn't consciously know every single word I said. That is the magic of learning with comprehensible input. It connects with your emotions and your imagination. This is the feeling you should be aiming for in your daily practice. A feeling of connection, not a feeling of confusion. Ultimately, the power of consistency will change not just your English level, but how you see yourself as a person. When you keep a promise to yourself, day after day after day, you build self-respect, you build discipline, you prove to yourself, in a very real and tangible way, that you are the kind of person who can achieve difficult, meaningful things through steady, patient, and persistent effort. This newfound confidence will spill over into all the other areas of your life. Learning English consistently is not just about learning English. It is an act of profound personal transformation. So, this is my challenge to you. Not tomorrow, not next Monday, not next month. Today. Right now. I challenge you to find your one small, simple, consistent action. Your one brick. Will it be reading one page of a news article written for learners? Will it be listening to a 3-minute song and trying to write down 5 words you understand? Will it be finding a graded reader, just like Maya and Liam did, and committing to just 10 or 15 minutes a day? Whatever you choose, make it small. Make it easy. Make it enjoyable. And then, tomorrow, do it again. And the day after that. And the day after that. Forget about the destination of fluency for now. Fall in love with the process. Fall in love with the simple, quiet, dignified routine of showing up for yourself. Build your wall, one perfect brick at a time. Plant your seed and water it every single day. And trust that in time, it will grow into something magnificent. Thank you so much for joining me here at English in Fluency. I truly hope the story of Liam and Maya has inspired you to think differently about your own learning journey. Remember, the greatest and most lasting achievements in life are almost always the result of small, seemingly insignificant, consistent actions performed over a long period of time. You have this power within you. You just have to unlock it. I would be honored to be a part of your journey. In the comments below this video, I want you to write what your one brick will be. What is the one small action you will commit to doing every day, starting today? By writing it down, you are making a powerful promise to yourself and to this wonderful community. Let's encourage and support each other on this path. If this story and this message have been helpful for you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. And be sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss our future discussions. Start today. Be consistent, and watch as your world begins to change. One day, one brick, one word at a time. My name is Alex, and I look forward to seeing you again, right here, on English in Fluency.